Okay. Hello, folks, and welcome to the Catholic Leadership Network podcast, helping ministry leaders succeed from the beginning. We're here to talk about all the stuff no one told you about in ministry leadership. Today, Christy and I are going to be talking to author Paul Jarzembowski about Lent. Paul's new book, Hope from the Ashes, helps Catholic and mainline Protestant churches connect with those who return to religious practices for Ash Wednesday and the season of Lent. Paul also works for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops in the Secretariat for Lay Ministry, Family, Life, and Youth. Full disclosure, Paul is my husband and coming live to us from the other room of the house. I've had the opportunity to watch Paul in this process of writing this book over a couple of years, and this last year has just been incredible, and I'm a very, very proud wife. So thank you, Paul, for joining us today. You did have a choice, and I really appreciate you saying yes to joining Christy and I. So let's get started. Yay!
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Paul. I also agree. Thanks, Paul, for joining us. And I don't feel intimidated at all right now, everybody. Just I want you to know, not intimidated at all. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, you are.
Sort of, I'm not sure.
I know you.
Two Jarzembowskis for the price of one.
Right? I mean, it's intense. Let's just say that. You guys, it's very lucky to be in this spot. But let's kick it off. So, Paul, you wrote this book and you probably did loads and loads of research as you were digging into this. So is there anything that really stuck out for you as a big surprise as you were doing the research for this book?
Yeah, I guess partly some of the surprise was just how widespread this phenomenon was. I mean, the phenomenon of people reconnecting in Lent for ashes. I think the surprise was not so much Ash Wednesday, but the rest of Lent. That the entirety of the season, in fact, there's even more people who are fasting on Fridays than there are people who come to Ash Wednesday. So if you can imagine just how packed our churches are on Ash Wednesdays, it's even more so the number of people who are engaging in some sort of fasting or abstinence on Fridays in Lent. And so that's kind of one of those things where I was like, wow. I mean, I suspected it, but then looking at the numbers and hearing from people, that's what surprised me the most, was that people's commitment, and especially people who are not that engaged with their faith normally, how engaged and how seriously they take Ash Wednesday and Lent. In fact, sometimes more so than the people who come every week or every day. I find that some of the people who are not as regular in their church attendance do take this season very seriously, very soberly. It's very meaningful to them. And I think that to me was delightful, if in a sense, if not surprising. So.
Okay, so then I want to ask a follow-up question there, because I did read the book, so I know what you said there, but can you give us any hints or teasers about why that is? Why they're so connected to this practice when they're not necessarily practicing faith or religion in other aspects of their life?
So one thing there's many reasons, and that's one of the things I kind of get at the book, is that there's as many reasons why people reconnect at this time of year as there are people who reconnect at this time of year. Everyone's story of why they approach the season is unique, but there are a couple of common threads or similar threads that do run through. One of them that's just been on my heart this past week actually has been the opportunity to really come to Jesus. Now, I know that's going to sound strange because we're like, hey, Jesus is present with us every week. But there's a palpable, tangible feeling that this is the time to meet Jesus, very especially at this time of year. Something about, I kind of think of in the Irish cultural community, thin spaces. And I think that Lent is a thin space where the veil between heaven and earth is thinner, and that people feel a sense of sacredness now. And I think that as people come, they come because they want to meet Jesus, and they feel a connection to Jesus at Lent, perhaps more profoundly than they do other times of the year. So I think that's another reason why that, and I think there is an innate desire in somebody, no matter how religious or not religious they are, to come and connect to Jesus. Jesus
Yeah,
means
that's
something
awesome.
more to more people than I think we give people credit for.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks. Sarah, do you have one?
Yeah, I mean, it was just fascinating this week for Ashes to see people come in for the, the afternoon drop in ash and dash kind of moments. You know, the I could see people tense as they walked in, like they were rushing in because this was the time that they had. And just as I distributed the ashes, turn away from sin and be faithful to the Gospels. And I could see the tension just drain from them. And I could see the release. And it was just really fantastic to see people have a physical experience, not just, in and out with the ash and dash, but I could see the tension release. Almost as if they felt their sins washing away, right?
Mm.
They know that we are all sinful, and this is the day that we all show that. We are all showing, broadcasting to the world that we are sinful people, and this isn't a sacrament, and it isn't a holy day of obligation. And yet I think people really take this time to release that sinful nature and what it is that they are, wrestling with. I had a number of people ask if they could go into our church. So we were in the narthex, and we have these beautiful glass doors going into our church. And I could see them, after they said thank you for the ashes, they kind of glanced at the doors, and I said, would you like to go in and pray? Feel free, it's open. And a number of people went in and sat for 5-10 minutes, whatever it was. And then they were on their way out, and we just handed them a nice little Lenten book, 5 minutes with Jesus, and I said, this is a gift for you. Thank you for coming in. I'm really glad that you're here. I think because, Paul, you and I have been talking about this so much, that now that I'm in parish life, this is an opportunity for me to be able to live out what you and I have been talking about for, many years. And, I haven't been in parish work in 10 years almost, you haven't been in parish work in a number of years, so this was actually boots on the ground, putting it into action, so what are some of the things that, that you've heard people putting into action? What are some of those things that we could be doing, throughout Lent? So Ash Wednesday's done. What can we, maybe quickly put into practice for these next couple of weeks?
So I want to pause for a moment, because there's something you said about the release that anxiety people feel, and then the release. One of the things that's sacred about this day is the fact that to give ashes. Now, in many churches in the United States and in North America, we give them on the forehead, but I also know that in many other parts of the world, they sprinkle it over the head, the crown of the head. But here's the thing: your hand is getting close to another person's face. And it's like when you have a child, and when you have a child, you caress it's like there's this caressing of the face, like, or I dare I say, like, I could just remember my own mom, pinching my cheek, or something like that. There is an intimacy that I think is there, where we allow someone to get close, and then it's okay. We allow them to get close, and they aren't harming, but they're comforting, if we were to ever have like a massage or whatever on our temples or something, or whatever on our neck, there is that release, because so much of this, and to allow another person into that physical space, and yet then to know it's safe. I think there's also a physicality. I think there's a psychological physicality actually to it, that you allow someone to do that, and to touch your forehead, and to make the sign of the cross on there. I think there's something to that, and I think that releases a sense of tension, because you are in safe space. And I think that's one of the things that I think is part of why people connect this time of year, is knowing that they have a safe space. knowing that they have a refuge. I'm not surprised they wanted to go into the church, because then that's like a sanctuary. Well, that it is a sanctuary, but it in a secular way, it feels like a sanctuary or a refuge from everything else in life, where they can clear that out.
Mhm.
So I think that there's something to it. Now, in terms of what people can do, I think it's keeping some of that spirit alive. I think now we don't have to give ashes and start touching people's foreheads every day of the year. That might get a little creepy. But just like I'm saying, we don't give out ashes every day, and stuff like that. Hey, it's Ash Thursday. Hey, it's Ash Saturday. But I think that drawing in some of the things that we do well this day, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of gravitated this, is what do we do well this day? So one of them is we have encounters with people. And I think there is something to be said about making more of an effort to have encounters with individuals. People come individually up for ashes, they like it. We often in parish work do things in groups. Hey, we put stuff in the bulletin for this group of people, and we hope that someone reads it. And that's a marketing technique. That's an old-fashioned technique that says, let's just throw it out there like a fire hose and see if anything hits anybody, as opposed to that individual, pulling the person and engaging with the person one-on-one, which is something we do so well this day. And so I think that one-on-one accompaniment is certainly an aspect of it. And honestly, that simply includes following up. I think one of the things that we can do is follow up with people. I actually say, if there's a day for churches to follow up with anybody for whom they haven't seen in a while, Friday's the day. I think that's the other thing too. Since Friday is a day that people gravitate, today's a great day to call. Like more so even than Sundays. I would say call them on Fridays. And I also tell parents, if their son or daughter is not as connected with the faith, or their grandchildren are not as connected with the faith, maybe make a couple of calls during Lent on Fridays. Because again, there's a sacredness to this day. And I think again, it's that thin space on Fridays where people are more receptive to those relationships, to those one-on-one experiences. So there's some official stuff we can do as church in terms of on Fridays. I think there's also the personal relation stuff that we can do within our own families, and with our own friends on this day. So there's many things we could obviously do going forward in Lent, but I kind of was drawn a lot to, again, that personal connection that you get one by one as people go in and know that you've literally touched their face. But spiritually, you've also touched them. And I think there's a great power in that.
Yeah. So can I was two things that you guys said, just like blowing my mind. So Paul, because I was in a group, looking at some of the things beforehand, I really feel like you helped me shift my gears about how I was approaching the season, because I've always had that sense of like, people are flooding in. How can we kind of bring the connection together? But the two things, one, my own self, I almost cried distributing ashes on Wednesday. I was at the good old Ash and Dash, and it felt like the line, it was just myself and our parochial vicar. Like, so we together were doing it at 12:10, which is a lunchtime thing, but I was still blown away by how many people were there. And there were times whenever I thought, is this line never going to end? But there was like, and not in a bad way. I just want to say, like, it just was like, there's so many people.
We have to shift our thing. Like, again, a lot of us in church work bemoan the fact that there's nobody coming. And then here's an opportunity. When will they stop coming?
Yeah. Well, and that was like, it was like, what if the church always looked like this? What would that be like? How about it? But there was this beautiful, then there was exactly like you said, Sarah, like there was that timidity about coming forward, a nervousness. I smile whenever I'm an extraordinary minister, and I smiled during ashes. And there was such this, like, they would smile back at me. And then they were like, oh, this isn't like, you're not coming to attack me. And Paul, you nailed it. Like the whole, I'm reaching out, which could be a violent gesture.
Right.
And also I think because of the pandemic has become such a taboo. Like I never have been like, I've always like, I shake hands well, but I'm not a big like touching people that I don't know, generally speaking. So I understand that reticence. And so to have a hand reach out towards you and then have it touch you in this gentle way. And also what came through my mind was, I wonder what Jesus felt like touching people constantly like this, like how beautiful it is that I get that's where I like for me. And then I'm looking at old faces, young faces, middle-aged faces. And then what happened to me yesterday is I had to follow up with the family about confirmation, and they came in and I didn't know them. And they said, "You put ashes on us yesterday," and that was like this really cool moment where I was like, wow, that's awesome. But I want to tag back into this question of the one-on-ones. Do you think like in Fridays, because we also have like stations and all of that sort of thing, like how can we turn that into something more connecting and like you're saying, like that one-on-one and encounter?
Well, some of it, I think, first of all, is in the presentation of it. When we talk about like Stations of the Cross, I mean, first of all, that's a phraseology that we in our Catholic circles definitely know what that means. But like to people who maybe are not familiar with that term or who aren't used to that because of they haven't had that connection to church, maybe even as a child, that stations is a very strange word. So like first of all, I think even reframing it, I've often thought, instead of Stations of the Cross this Friday night, how about journeying with Jesus this Friday night? Because again, there's that encounter with Jesus, that encounter with the Lord that people want. And so, what is Stations? It's a journey with Jesus. I mean, we're not false advertising here, but we're using phrasing that means something, because Stations of the Cross has if we take like a 30,000 foot view of that name, even that seems a little odd. But I think then at the moment in the station's experience, allowing a guest to feel like they're very welcome in that space, even inviting them, if they're willing, to take a leadership role in that as well. Like we often reserve the leadership roles of rituals like that to the tried and true, the people who we know. But what if we took the risk and invited somebody who we don't know and said, now we have to be open to them saying, no, I'm totally freaked out by that. And that's fine. But, I would imagine that like out of every 10 people that if you were to invite to do that, you'll probably get about 3 or 4 that'll say no, but you might get 5 or 6 who will say, oh, okay, I'll take you up on that.
I'm just going to say this because whenever I was a brand new Catholic, fully initiated, and I was gung-ho and doing everything. And I'll say this, like I've been a reader at Mass for a long time and I'm decent at it. They were calling small, like families or different organizations to lead the stations. And they asked me to do it. And I said, yes, foolishly. And I show up and the pastoral associate's there in the sacristy with me. And she's like, yeah, so then you'll just read this. It's the first time I'm literally, I think, ever praying stations in my life. And she's like, you just read this and then you sing a verse of the Stabat Mater. And I was like, what? And she's like, the Stabat Mater. And I'm like, no, I don't even know what that means, man. Like, right. I don't speak Latin. And
we I don't know what that means.
I think that is so yes, there again, we have to do this smartly, of course. And that is, of course, invite someone to read, but don't like make it the most like
convenient thing to do ever.
Possible. Like, heck, sit in your pew and read it. Like, that's all you got to do. I'll point to you, you go, and that's it, or whatever it might be. Like, don't make it too difficult. So,
right.
Yeah. Don't have them jump through our. I mean, so invite, but be patient and be realistic as to what someone who is new would do. But I think that is one way to do it. Or even to hold, if a station service, for instance, like if there is some sort of cross that people take from station to station, whether it's the processional cross or if there is like a larger cross that perhaps, gets taken, even just doing that, and maybe, or it could be one of those things where you just invite people to walk with you. Don't sit in your pews, but to literally walk around the church. I'm a big fan of thinking how the art of pilgrimage is something beautiful, and thus the act of moving as part of faith is very powerful for people. We do so much sitting, standing, and kneeling in one place in our churches, but we don't do a whole lot of moving within our churches. I'm not talking liturgical dance, but I am talking procession. I am talking pilgrimage, moving through. And so even sometimes doing that, and if there is some sort of thing tangible, again, that tangibility, ashes, palms, these are tangible things. So on the wood, is the wood of the cross of some sort being like, can people hold it and move from station? And it's amazing where people will go with their prayer when they're doing that. And like, I've had people who've done those kinds of things say, as I was moving, I felt the wood getting heavier. Well, there is a physicality to that. You stand with a heavy piece of wood over a long period of time, it will feel heavier because you're getting more tired.
Yeah.
But there is a spiritual value to that because they are feeling the weight of the cross as it goes on. So, I mean, if that's a possibility, and that's a great way, again, leaning into the tangibility, and stations can be incredibly tangible. Sometimes we approach it in a way that's very cold and isn't very interactive. And so it can kind of, it's just, you're a spectator then. Allow people to be a participant in stations, or the journeying with Jesus, or whatever you might call it, to invite people in. So again, that because that Friday is so sacred to people, there's a lot of things you can do, and I think a lot of willingness on the part of people to engage.
Yeah.
So Christy, you mentioned it, and just for those people who don't know, what is Stabat Mater?
So I don't know what that, like, what you're putting me on the spot, Sarah, but
okay,
it's like,
we can ask Paul, because I'm pretty sure he would know that, and the lineage and the history of and all of that. So if we can, whoever wants to answer that, I just want to make sure that the folks that are listening,
it's a hymn, and it refers to the Blessed Mother at the cross, her station keeping, and this notion that Mary was present. And it is in Latin, I do believe it's Mary stands, or stays, or the mother stay, so it's the Mother Mary hymn that we would, associate with it. But we've done it in Latin for many years. And so it's more known by its Latin phrase because that's been, said so often, than by its English translation. But yeah, so.
But yeah, I mean, I think you go to stations 2 times and it's the same, couple of notes in a row. It's very kind of chanty, and in the English translation, they've worked it out to be kind of rhymey, and it makes sense, but you sing it in between each station as that cross moves is part of it. But I'm also thinking that, Paul, like, even just having like a 10-minute description of what it is that we're doing, why we genuflect in the middle, why do we say these things, what does it all mean? Because I think that too, like, why,
Right. I think it's not too much effort on the part of communities if they want to make a 1-page pamphlet, maybe fold it in half and have it available for people at every, and you can use it all the 6 weeks or 5 weeks, whatever you do, of the stations in your church, and have it available to explain, like, what does this mean? What do the prayers mean? Why do we do it? I mean, you can do that all in 1 page or a half page, just so that people know. Heck, you could have gone, that's the thing, in Catholic circles, we often do things even if we don't understand them, because we trust that the person who's invited us to this knows what is best for our spiritual lives. So we often just do it without really even inquiring as to what it means. So I guess that even people who are regular attendees would appreciate some sort of explanation, as well as the people who are visitors and guests. So so do this on Ash Wednesday, do this at stations. I know that there's sometimes this tension between how often do you explain something during the rite versus how much do you explain it. I know that there's that tension of, like, we don't like to teach while we're doing it because we think the ritual should explain itself. the nice thing about a pamphlet is it takes that conversation out. Fine, then let's let that be the teaching tool. If we're not going to offer the teaching in the midst of it, we can still offer it there.
And I think doing stuff like that throughout the year, it's so, thank you for that reminder, because you're right. We do things by rote because it's that time of year, because that's what we're supposed to do, but we don't understand why we're supposed to do it or why our faith calls us to it. So I really like that. I've been taking lots of notes. I mean, you and I talk about this all the time, but I'm still taking notes. There's always something new that pops up, and the spirit moves, the spirit just moves, and inspiration and things that we hear differently. We've been doing Stations of the Cross for as long as you and I have known each other. I mean, we met at
Stations of the Cross, just FYI.
We did.
Shout out for Stations.
We met at the 15th station, which is the bar across the street from there, which all the young adults went to, and we would do Stations of the Cross, and then the 15th station would be a different bar each week. So, but that's a nice, fun young adult thing to do.
Just to be clear, though, Paul, you don't have Journey with Jesus, like trademarked or copyrighted or anything. We're all allowed to use that in our social needs posts.
Totally.
Okay,
make good use of whatever phraseology, if that's one of them. No, I have not. I don't.
That's awesome. I totally wrote
that
down too. I wrote that down too. So, as we start to wind down our time here, our premise for this podcast is really about, talking about the stuff that we wish we knew or nobody talks about in ministry. What do you wish you knew when you started out in ministry, either about Ash Wednesday and Lent or just in general? What really pops up to you? What do you wish you knew when you started out?
I'll totally throw you a curveball because I'm going to actually go in a different direction with this. I know, like
you giving him a weird face, though. So I'm just like, of course he's going to go in a different direction. Go for it.
So one of the things that to me, and something that I've been growing in my journeying with Jesus, trademark copyright. No, I was kidding. One of the things I've learned in this, and especially I think at Lent, it's very reminder because everyone comes on Ash Wednesday, and every type of person comes, different cultures, different communities, different abilities. And I think the thing I wish I known earlier in my ministry was, number one, to be aware of how inclusive my ministry should have been. I often ministered to people who experienced life like me, because I had grown up in a church where I was ministered to in an environment where I looked and acted like the person who was ministering to me. So it just was continuing the cycle. I wish I knew more. I wish I had done more and was earlier in my ministry with people of other cultural families, with African Americans, with Asian Pacific Islanders, with Hispanic Latinos, with the Native American and the migrant communities. I wish I had known more and done more, engaged more with persons with disabilities and the deaf community, because all of those individuals are, I was involved in youth and in young adult ministry. In my communities, there were youth and young adults who were of those cultural families, who were of those different abilities. And so I wish that I had been as aware of just how inclusive. But I think one of the things is, and where I'll tie it back in, is that where Lent and Ash Wednesday is a great reminder was that this day is very broadly, in the United States especially, all abilities, all cultural families find a connection at this time of year, and maybe in an increased way. And so the more I leaned into and learned about Ash Wednesday, the more inclusive I saw it. One of the things Pope Francis says in his document, Christus Vivit, is we are a church with open doors and open spaces, and that all are welcome, and that no one should be excluded or exclude themselves. And Ash Wednesday and Lent are great opportunities to share just that we are a church with open doors, that no one is excluded or should exclude themselves. And so that lesson I've learned over time through this experience, but I kind of wish I knew it going in, because I think I would have framed my ministry a little differently. I think I would have crafted things to be more aware of the different cultural families and different abilities that are out there. So I wish I had been more aware of the Catholicity and the inclusivity and the broadness and the beautifully diverseness of diversity. Diverseness, I'm not sure if that's a word, but anyway,
It works.
diversity of our faith, of our humanity, of our country, and in our local communities. And I wish that I had never said the words, oh, well, we don't have fill in the blank in this parish or this community, because they were there and I was blind to have seen them. So I wish back then I knew that. And I'm grateful for the experiences of many, many Ash Wednesdays over the years where I've just opened my eyes to see who's around me and discovered, okay, this is a church that is much bigger than I ever anticipated, and I'm grateful for it. So
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing that up. I agree. I saw a lot of cultural communities on Wednesday that I was not aware of that were in my parish. So thank you for that. I wrote down a couple of ideas for Christy and I to talk about in the future, just based off of that. So thank you so much. Paul, thanks for being with us. You did not have to say yes, even though I am your wife, and you did. And I appreciate that. And I'm so very proud of you. Where can folks find your book, Hope from the Ashes?
Hope from the Ash. Christy?
Yeah, I don't, mine's at work. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
You're using it at work.
Yeah, I know. I am using it at work. So plug there, you guys. It's actually absolutely applicable immediately. There's lots of wonderful ideas. Buy it, read it, use it for discussion, even in your parish staff, I think would be really helpful.
So if people go to paulistpress.com, and at the moment it's on the main page, but even after, as the Lenten season goes on, or after Lent, it may not be on the main page anymore. But just search for Hope from the Ashes on paulistpress.com. That's the best way to get it. Though if you have particular online booksellers that you frequent, they're certainly available there as well. But Paulist Press would be a great place, because also on the website, I have a video, and I also have a study guide that's available on that website for free. So people
Study guide is great.
can download that. So,
and folks who are working at parishes, is there a bulk discount?
Yes, actually, if people, if going through Paulist Press is a great way to get, like, if you need to get 5 copies or 10 copies for your parish council, your evangelization committee, your welcoming committee, your staff, whatever, all your volunteers. And by the way, this book actually would be probably good to do even beyond Lent, because I do have ideas in there of how to make, basically, without giving ashes out every day, how to make every day an Ash Wednesday experience in your churches. How to make, what lessons does Ash Wednesday and Lent teach us that we need for the rest of the year? So it's good no matter what time. And today would be a great day to start preparing for the next Ash Wednesday and the next Lent, because if you have like 11 months of advanced preparation, you're gonna kick some serious butt next Lent in your engagement of who is coming. So
That's so true. I'm already writing down notes for next year. So thank you for that. Thank you, Paul, for joining us. Christy, wonderful questions. It's always a joy to work with you on this podcast. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back again soon with the next episode of the Catholic Leadership Network podcast, where we talk about the stuff nobody's talking about or told you about parish ministry leadership. Have a wonderful day and enjoy your Lent.
Peace.
bye.